She sent a breakup text to the wrong number. A Mafia boss replied, "Come over. He won't be a problem." Claire watches through the library glass as Noah, her rock for 3 years, presses his study partner against the very bookshelf where they first kissed. Cold, crystalline fury replaces her heartbreak. She types a text meant to end his world, but a blurred vision and a shaking thumb send it to a number 1 digit off. The reply doesn't offer comfort or a wrong number apology. It is a command that vibrates with lethal authority, wrong number. But if you need him gone, come over. He won't be a problem. Attached is a pin drop to the Black Tower, the most fortified glass monolith in the city. The betrayal felt like a physical wound, raw and bleeding in the dim light of Claire's apartment. She was alone. Her best friend Sophia was 1,000 miles away, leaving Claire with nothing but a phone and a terrifying invitation. Julian Black didn't send flowers. He sent a black town car that sat idling outside her door like a predator. His messages weren't supportive, they were tactical. "He's at the Sapphire Lounge now. With her. Do you want the photos, or do you want me to close his accounts?" Claire stared at the screen. This man, whose profile photo was nothing but a sharp jawline and a hand-tailored suit, was offering a brand of justice the law couldn't provide. Rational fear told her to block the number and hide. But as she looked at the amber glow of the Black Tower on the horizon, a different, darker instinct took over. Julian wasn't just a stranger, he was a solution. When she tentatively asked why he was helping, his reply arrived with a chilling, neo-noir wit. "I find I have a low tolerance for men who waste good women. Come for coffee, Claire. Let's discuss your problem properly. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. One wrong digit changed her life. One cold response sealed her fate. When Claire Monroe caught her boyfriend cheating, she wanted revenge. She got a Mafia king instead. Now, the libraries are gone, replaced by blood-stained obsidian and the weight of a black diamond ring. In Julian Black's world, the only thing more dangerous than his enemies is the length he'll go to keep what is his. Are you brave enough to answer? Read the full story now to see how a naive student became the most feared woman in the underworld. Click here to claim your place in the Black Tower and join the rise of the Mafia Queen. He won't be a problem anymore, but Julian Black might be your biggest one yet. The rain in the city didn't fall, it descended like a heavy, gray curtain, blurring the neon signs of the Diamond District into smudges of electric blue and poison green. Claire Monroe stood under the library's stone portico, her breath hitching in her throat as she stared at the glowing screen of her phone. The text she had intended for Noah, the man who had just dismantled 3 years of trust in the span of a single afternoon, was a masterpiece of shattered dignity and righteous fury. She had typed it with trembling fingers while hiding behind a row of architectural history books, watching him press another woman against a mahogany shelf. "I saw you. Don't bother coming home. Don't bother calling. You're dead to me." She had hit send with a sob, only to realize a heartbeat too late that her thumb had slipped. A single digit was wrong. The bubble was green, not blue. The recipient wasn't Noah. It was a string of numbers she didn't recognize. She expected no reply. Or perhaps a polite, wrong number, from a stranger. Instead, the vibration that rattled her hand 3 seconds later felt heavier, somehow more ominous. Wrong number. But if you need him gone, come over. He won't be a problem. Attached was a GPS coordinate. The Black Tower. The building was a legend in the city, a monolith of obsidian glass that seemed to swallow the light around it. It was the headquarters of Black Industries, but the streets knew it as the throne of Julian Black. No one saw him, yet everyone felt him. He was the gravity that kept the city's underworld from drifting into chaos. Claire should have gone home. She should have blocked the number, crawled into bed, and cried until the betrayal felt less like a jagged piece of glass in her lung. But the fury was louder than the fear. She looked at her reflection in the library's glass door, her eyes red-rimmed, her hair damp from the spray of the rain, and she felt a sudden, violent urge to be seen by someone who wasn't a liar. The drive to the tower was a blur. The lobby was a cathedral of cold marble and silence, guarded by men who didn't look like security guards. They looked like soldiers who had traded their fatigues for $5,000 suits. They didn't ask for her name. They simply gestured toward the private elevator. The ride up was silent, the pressure in her ears mounting as the floors ticked by. When the doors finally hissed open, she stepped into a space that redefined the word luxury. The penthouse was a sprawling expanse of open space, lit by the amber glow of recessed lighting and the shimmering grid of the city below. Julian Black was standing by the window. He was taller than he looked in the few grainy photos that existed of him. His back was to her, his navy suit jacket pulled tight across broad shoulders. He held a crystal glass of something dark, the ice clinking softly as he turned. His face was a map of sharp angles and dangerous intent. His eyes weren't cold, they were focused, like a predator who had been waiting for the exact right moment to strike. "You're late, Claire," he said. The way he said her name, like he had been practicing the syllables, made her heart skip a beat. "How do you know my name?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "I know many things. I know you've been dating a man named Noah Pierce for 3 years. I know you're a graduate student in architecture with a 3.9 GPA. And I know that 20 minutes ago, you watched him kiss a woman named Elena in the east wing of the university library." Claire felt a wave of nausea. "Are you stalking me?" "I was investigating the Pierce family," Julian replied, stepping toward her. Each footfall was silent. He moved with a grace that suggested he could kill her before she even realized he had moved. "Noah is a piece of a much larger puzzle. You were simply the collateral damage in his pathetic attempts to play at being a man." He stopped just inches from her. He smelled of sandalwood, rain, and power. He didn't offer her a drink or a seat. He simply reached out and took her phone from her hand. His fingers were warm, his touch electric against her skin. "He's a small man, Claire. Small men use people. They lie because the truth is too heavy for them to carry." Julian looked down at the text she had sent. "You told him he was dead to you. I can make that a literal reality, or a professional one. The choice is yours." "I don't want anyone dead," Claire gasped, though a dark part of her, the part that had been crushed in the library, throbbed with interest. "Then we will settle for ruin," Julian said. He slid a folder across the marble island. "Look." Inside were photos. Not just of the library, but of Noah at a hotel. Noah at a bank. Noah meeting with men who looked like the shadows under a bridge. "He's been using your name, Claire. Forging your signature on manifests for things that would put you in a cage for a decade. He wasn't just cheating on you, he was setting you up to be his fall girl." Claire gripped the edge of the marble. The room seemed to tilt. The betrayal wasn't just romantic, it was existential. Everything she thought she knew about her life was a lie designed to keep her compliant. "Why tell me this?" she asked, looking up at him. Julian reached out, his thumb grazing her lower lip. It was a gesture of immense possessiveness, one that should have made her run, but instead, it made her feel anchored. "Because I have a low tolerance for waste," Julian murmured, his gaze dropping to her mouth. "And a woman like you is a terrible thing to waste on a man like him. You aren't going back to that apartment tonight, Claire. You're staying here, where I can see you. Where he can't touch you." "I can't just stay here," she protested weakly. "You can. And you will." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a low, velvet rasp. "I've already decided you belong in my orbit. And in this city, what I decide becomes law. Tomorrow, Noah Pierce begins to lose everything. Tonight, you sleep. My men will bring your things. You're safe now, Claire. I've handled it." He walked away then, leaving her standing in the center of his obsidian palace. As she watched him look back out at the city, she realized the wrong number hadn't been an accident at all. It was an invitation into the dark. By the time she woke up the next morning in a bed with silk sheets that felt like water, a silver tray sat on the nightstand. A single cup of coffee, black, and a note in elegant, sharp handwriting. The dismantling has begun. Do not leave the floor. You are mine to protect now. JB. The morning light in the black tower didn't feel like a beginning, it felt like a spotlight. Claire sat in the back of a black sedan, the leather cool against her skin, as the city blurred past in a smear of gray and steel. Julian sat beside her, his attention divided between a tablet displaying fluctuating stock markets and the woman who had effectively become his ward. They were heading to a small, discreet cafe tucked away in the Diamond District, a place where the windows were reinforced with polycarbonate and the staff were paid in silence. You look like you didn't sleep, Julian said, his eyes never leaving the screen. It's hard to sleep when your entire life was a lie told by a man you thought you loved, Claire replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. Julian finally looked at her, his dark eyes tracking the exhaustion on her face. Noah Pierce isn't a man. He's a parasite. He looked for a host that was clean, respectable, and trusting. You provided the perfect camouflage for his crimes. They entered the cafe, and the manager immediately led them to a booth in the far corner, shielded by a frosted glass partition. Julian ordered for both of them, black coffee for him, a latte for her, and then laid a tablet on the table between them. This is why I was looking for him before you ever sent that text, Julian began. He swiped through a series of documents. Noah has been moving small, untraceable amounts of money through offshore accounts. But it wasn't his money. He's been skimming from his family's pharmaceutical firm, Pierce MedTech. His father is a man who deals in legal poison, but Noah wanted the illegal kind. Claire leaned in, the technical drawings of the bank transfers catching her eye. Her architecture training allowed her to see patterns, and here, the patterns were jagged and desperate. He's been forging my signature on these, she whispered, pointing to a digital scan of a manifest. Yes. He used your name as a firewall. If the authorities ever caught wind of the illegal prescriptions being diverted, the trail would lead straight to your apartment, your bank account, and your signature. He was going to let you take the fall while he fled with the proceeds. The realization felt like a cold drenching. Julian reached across the table, his hand covering hers. His skin was warm, a grounding force in the middle of her collapsing world. I told you I would handle it. As of 9 a.m., the board of Pierce MedTech received an anonymous tip regarding Noah's embezzlement. By 11 a.m., his credentials were wiped. He has no job, no access to his trust fund, and as of 20 minutes ago, his landlord was informed that his security deposit was forfeited due to criminal activity. Claire looked at Julian, truly seeing him for the first time. You're destroying him. No, Julian corrected, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I am removing a problem from my city. And I am making sure he never has the resources to hurt you again. You're under my protection now, Claire. That means I don't just watch over you. I erase the things that threaten you. As they left the cafe, Claire felt a strange, terrifying sense of relief. She had been a victim of a small man's greed, but she was now the project of a powerful man's obsession. She spent the rest of the day in Julian's library, researching his name. She found nothing but whispers of a man who controlled the docks, the high-rises, and the shadows in between. He was the ghost of the underworld, a man who existed outside the law because he was the law. And for some reason, he had chosen her. The fourth day began with a public marking of territory. Claire was attempting to maintain some semblance of her old life, standing outside the university's architecture studio, when the matte black sedan pulled onto the curb with the arrogance of an apex predator. The students around her went silent, their eyes wide as the door opened. Julian didn't send a driver this time. He stepped out himself, his presence commanding the space as if he owned the very air. He walked straight to Claire, ignoring the whispers. Get in, he said. It wasn't a request, it was an order that felt like a caress. I have a lecture, Julian, she protested, though her feet were already moving toward the car. You have a life to rebuild. The lecture can wait. Inside the car, the air was thick with the scent of his cologne, expensive, masculine, and suffocating in the best way. he didn't drive her back to the tower. Instead, he took her to a restaurant that didn't have a sign on the door. Inside, the walls were lined with velvet, and the lighting was so low it felt like a secret. Throughout dinner, Julian's phone buzzed incessantly. He ignored it, his focus entirely on Claire. He asked her about her designs, her dreams of building sustainable housing, and the way her mind worked. He wasn't just protecting her, he was studying her. "Why me?" she asked, over a glass of vintage red wine that tasted like liquid rubies. "There are thousands of women in this city who would kill to be in this seat." "Because you sent the text," Julian replied, his eyes locked on hers. "Because when I told you to come over, you were brave enough to do it. And because I saw the way you looked at those blueprints in the folder. You don't just see buildings, Claire. You see how things fit together. I need that. And I want you." The tension in the car on the way back was a living thing. When the car stopped in the private garage of the Black Tower, Julian didn't let her out. He pulled her toward him, his hand tangling in the hair at the nape of her neck. The kiss was a revelation. It was dark, demanding, and tasted of the bourbon he had finished at dinner. It wasn't a romantic gesture, it was a claim. He was branding her, letting her know that the world of libraries and lectures was over. She was his now. That night, as she lay in the guest suite, she saw a news report on her phone. A fire had broken out in a small apartment complex, the one where Noah lived. No one was hurt, but the building was a total loss. Everything Noah owned was ash. Claire stared at the screen, her heart hammering. Julian hadn't lied. He was making Noah Pierce disappear, one piece at a time. The 7th day was when the mask finally slipped. Claire was walking through the university plaza, trying to find some sense of normalcy, when Noah appeared. He looked like a ghost, eyes bloodshot, clothes wrinkled, his hands shaking. "Claire! Claire, stop!" he screamed, stumbling toward her. The students around them scattered. "He's a monster. He took everything. My job, my money, he burned my fucking apartment, Claire." "You did this to yourself, Noah," Claire said, her voice shaking but her stance firm. "You forged my name. You were going to let me go to prison. I was going to save us. I just needed a little more time." Noah lunged for her, his fingers clawing at her arm. "You have to tell them. You have to tell the police he's threatening me." He never reached her. Two men in charcoal suits, men Claire recognized from the Black Tower, materialized from the crowd. One caught Noah's wrist, twisting it with a sickening crack that made the air turn cold. The other stepped in front of Claire, his back a wall of solid muscle. "Mr. Black is waiting, Ms. Monroe," the enforcer said, his voice as flat as a gravestone. They didn't take her to the tower. They drove deep into the countryside, past miles of forest and iron fencing, to a sprawling estate that looked like it belonged in a different century. This was Julian's private sanctuary, a fortress of stone and security. Julian was waiting on the terrace, a glass of scotch in his hand, watching the sunset. He didn't look at her as she approached. "He touched you," Julian said. It wasn't a question. It was a condemnation. "He's desperate, Julian. He's lost his mind. He has lost his place in this world," Julian replied, finally turning to face her. The sunset cast long, bloody shadows across his face. "No more games, Claire. You've seen the edges of what I do. Now you are in the center of it. I don't just run a business. I run the underworld. The docks, the drugs, the debt, it all flows through me. And now, you flow through me too." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Everything in this city belongs to someone. And you, Claire, belong to me. I have decided that you are the only thing I will never allow to be broken." Claire looked at the armed guards on the perimeter, then back at the man who had decimated her past to ensure her future. She realized with a jolt of terror and thrill that she wasn't just being protected. She was being claimed by a king who would burn the world to keep her on her throne. The night at the estate was a masterclass in surrender. In the master suite, surrounded by the scent of old wood and expensive silk, Claire stopped fighting the inevitable. Julian's touch was both a promise and a threat, a silent declaration that her old life was a skin she had finally shed. The next morning, the atmosphere shifted from the carnal to the cold. Julian led her into his private study, a room filled with monitors and filing cabinets that hummed with the secrets of the city. "I need you to see this," Julian said, his voice stripped of the previous night's warmth. He opened a laptop and showed her a series of encrypted emails. Noah wasn't just skimming. He was working with the Pierce family's rivals, a syndicate that's been trying to move into my territory for years. He was selling them internal data from his father's firm, and he was using your apartment as a drop-off point for the physical files. Claire felt the blood drain from her extremities. "I was a courier? I didn't even know." "Exactly. If I hadn't intercepted that text, if I hadn't moved you into the tower, you would have been caught in a federal sting. The FBI has been tracking that drop-off point for months. Your signatures on those manifests? Those are the smoking guns they need to put someone away for life." He pulled out a stack of original documents, the ones with her forged signature. "I took these from the Pierce MedTech vault last night. Without these, the feds have nothing but a disgraced ex-employee's word. I can burn these, Claire. I can make you a ghost in their system." He looked at her, his gaze heavy with expectation. "But it means you never go back. You can't be Claire Monroe, the architecture student anymore. You would have to be someone else. Someone who stands beside me." Claire looked at the papers, the evidence of her near destruction. She looked at Julian, the man who had become her judge, jury, and executioner. She realized that the wrong number hadn't just saved her from a cheating boyfriend, it had saved her from a life sentence. "Burn them," she said, her voice a whisper of steel. Julian's smile was slow and triumphant. He dropped the papers into a silver bowl and lit a match. As the evidence of her old life turned to ash, Claire felt a weight lift, replaced by a dark, intoxicating sense of purpose. She was no longer a victim of a small man's greed, she was the partner of a powerful man's legacy. The peace of the estate was a fragile thing, shattered on the 12th day by the arrival of the federal government. Claire was in the garden, sketching the Gothic arches of the estate's ballroom, when the sound of heavy tires on gravel echoed through the trees. Two agents in dark suits stepped out of a black SUV. They didn't have a warrant, but they had questions. Julian met them at the entrance, his lawyers flanking him like a phalanx of modern knights. "We're looking for Claire Monroe," the lead agent said, his eyes scanning the windows of the house. "We have reason to believe she's being held here against her will in connection with the Pierce MedTech investigation." Julian didn't blink. "Ms. Monroe is a guest of mine. And as you can see, she is free to move about the grounds. Unless you have a charge to bring, I suggest you leave my property." From the balcony, Claire watched the exchange. She felt like a bird in a gilded cage, watching the hunters circle below. When Julian came back inside, his expression was grim. "They're desperate," he told her. "The Pierces are feeding them lies to distract from their own corruption. They're offering you a plea deal, Claire. They want you to testify that I kidnapped you, that I forced you to stay here. In exchange, they'll look into the forged signatures." "They're lying," Claire said. "Of course they are. But they are the law, and I am not. This is your choice, Claire. You can go with them. You can tell them what they want to hear, and I'll have my lawyers fight it until you're free. Or you stay here, and we fight them on my terms. But if you stay, you are choosing a side in a war that doesn't end." Later that night, Sophia's voice came through a burner phone. "Claire, the news is saying you're a fugitive. They're saying you're with a criminal. Please, just come home." Claire looked at Julian, who stood in the shadows of the library, waiting for her answer. She thought of the library, the cheating, the forged signatures, and the man who had burned an entire apartment building to protect her honor. "I'm not coming home, Sophia," Claire said, her voice clear. "I'm where I need to be." She hung up and looked at Julian. "I've made my choice. Teach me how to fight. The following week was an education in the mechanics of power. Julian moved her back to the Black Tower, but this time, she wasn't a guest, she was an apprentice. She was introduced to the inner circle: Marcus, a man whose quiet demeanor hid a history of brutal enforcement; Victor, the tactical lead who moved like a shadow; and Elena, the woman who handled the legitimate side of Julian's billions. The waterfront project, Julian said one evening, gesturing to a set of blueprints on his desk. It's a pier stronghold. If we take it, we control the shipping lanes for the entire coast. But their security is tight. Claire looked at the drawings. Her eyes moved over the load-bearing walls, the ventilation shafts, and the sub-basement access points. You're looking at the front door, she said, pointing to a service entrance. But the structural weakness is here, in the old seawall. If you come in through the drainage tunnels, you're behind their primary security grid before they even know you're on the property. Julian looked at the map, then at her. A spark of genuine admiration lit his eyes. You have a mind for this, Claire. You see the gaps in the world. For the next 8 days, Claire worked side by side with Julian's strategists. She wasn't just designing buildings anymore, she was designing traps. She learned how to launder information, how to read the body language of a man who was lying to save his life, and how to command a room without saying a word. She watched Julian order the systematic destruction of a rival supply chain, and for the first time, she didn't feel a pang of conscience. She felt the thrill of the strike. She was realizing that the world was divided into those who were used and those who did the using. She had spent 26 years being used. She was done. You're changing, Julian whispered to her late one night, his hand tracing the line of her spine. I'm waking up, she replied. The breaking point came in the form of a silent alarm. Noah, driven to a state of psychotic desperation after losing everything, had used his last remaining connection to the Pierce family to bypass the security of Claire's old apartment building. He thought she was there, hiding from the monster who had taken her. The security feed showed him kicking in the door, a handgun shaking in his grip, screaming her name into the empty hallway. Julian didn't call the police. He looked at Claire. He's at your old home. He's armed. He's dangerous. I can have Victor end this in 30 seconds. Or, you can finish it. Take me there, Claire said. They arrived at the apartment complex in a fleet of black SUVs. Julian's men moved with surgical precision, clearing the floor and securing the perimeter. When Claire stepped into her old living room, the smell of her past, vanilla candles and old books, felt like a foreign language. Noah was in the center of the room, held down by Marcus and Victor. He looked up, his eyes bulging when he saw her. Claire. You're alive. I'm here to save you. I'm going to kill him, Claire, I swear. You're not saving anyone, Noah, Claire said, her voice echoing in the empty room. She stood in front of him, Julian standing just 2 paces behind her, a dark shadow of support. You're a thief and a coward. You tried to ruin my life to save your own skin. I did it for us. There is no us. There is only the woman I am now, and the man you were too weak to become. She looked at the gun lying on the floor. She looked at Julian. He's a ghost, Julian, she said. Make sure he never haunts me again. Noah's face twisted with a final, ugly realization. He saw that she wasn't a captive, she was a convert. In a final, suicidal burst of energy, he lunged toward her, reaching for the weapon on the floor. Julian moved before Noah could even draw a breath. It was a display of controlled, absolute violence. Julian didn't use a weapon. He used his body as a blunt instrument. A strike to the windpipe silenced Noah's scream, a sweep of the leg sent him crashing into the coffee table, a final, crushing blow to the jaw ended the struggle. Noah lay on the floor, unconscious and broken. Julian didn't even have a hair out of place. He turned to Claire, his chest rising and falling slowly. Is it done? Claire looked at the man who had been her life for 3 years, now reduced to a heap on the floor. She felt a profound sense of closure. It's done. Victor, Julian said, not looking away from Claire. Clean the room. I want no trace of him left in her memory. And call the Pierce patriarch. Tell him his son is in my custody. If they want him back, they will sign over the waterfront titles and leave this city by dawn. As they walked out of the apartment, Claire stopped by the building's security office. She looked at the terrified guard. This building's surveillance is outdated. I'll be sending a team to install a 360-degree digital grid. You'll answer to the Black Tower now. The guard nodded frantically. In the car, Claire took Julian's hand. Her fingers were steady. She had seen the violence that sustained his world, and instead of recoiling, she had accepted it as the price of her own freedom. She was no longer the girl who sent a wrong text. She was the woman who had answered the right call. The wedding was not an affair of flowers and lace. It was an affair of power and blood. It took place in the estate's private chapel, under the watchful eyes of the city's most dangerous men and the silent approval of the shadows. Claire wore a gown of ivory silk that clung to her like a second skin, her only jewelry a black diamond that matched the one on Julian's hand. Her best friend Sophia was there, watching with a mixture of fear and awe, realizing that the Claire she knew was gone, replaced by someone far more formidable. The Pierce family has been neutralized, Claire whispered as they stood at the altar. The waterfront is ours. The shipping manifests are clear. We are the only law in this city. I know, Julian replied, his voice a low growl of pride. My queen. Noah was gone, serving a life sentence in a high-security facility where Julian's name was the only currency that mattered. The FBI had stopped looking for the missing student and started worrying about the strategic advisor to Black Industries. The final scene took place at the top of the Black Tower. Claire sat at the obsidian desk, reviewing the plans for a new citywide development project, one that would provide housing for thousands while serving as a perfect network for Julian's operations. Julian entered the room, his jacket off, his sleeves rolled up to reveal the tattoos that told the story of his rise. He placed his hands on her shoulders, looking at the city they now ruled together. Wrong numbers, Julian mused. Claire leaned back into him, her eyes reflecting the glowing grid of their kingdom. They can lead to very right outcomes, if you're brave enough to answer the call. The city lay below them, vibrant and dangerous, and for the first time in her life, Claire Monroe wasn't just safe. She was the woman who held the keys to the kingdom.